And it is this Saturday Coffee Klatch with Heather Lofthouse and yours truly, Robert Reich. Heather, we've come to the end of dreadful week one of the Trump regime. I'm going to call it the regime instead of administration. So what are we going to talk about today? There's so much.
There's so much. It's 2.0. I'm exhausted, also finding reasons to carry on, but this is not fun, 2.0. Okay, things. Bob, there's so much to do. We have executive orders. What's happening at the border? We have January 6th rioters, aka hostages, being pardoned. I haven't even mentioned Elon Musk.
Heather, you go through this list and I am nauseous, really. I mean, I have a hard time controlling this degree of outrage or depression. And what are you doing to kind of stay sane?
I mean, I go to my day job, I look at my kid, I get sad in the news, I talk to friends, I read books, I get back into it and get depressed. I go to strategy meetings with people who are worse off than, I am, and we brainstorm. And then you keep going. I mean, I just don't stop.
Yeah, I don't stop either.
Scary.
I actually work for me. This kind of resistance work, that's what I call it, is therapeutic. I mean, it makes me feel a little bit better, even though this is a horror, an absolute horror show. You mentioned, the first thing you mentioned was the executive orders. And some of there's kind of a blitzkrieg shock and awe quality to what Trump has been doing. There's so much, it's difficult to sort out what's serious from what's not serious.
He does that on purpose, right? Let's be clear. He's like, did Biden even, do executive orders and have people come in his office and ask him questions? Yeah, he did actually. He just doesn't do 100 for the sake of doing 100.
Well, that's right. And some of them are real. I mean, I thought that the, ending birthright citizenship, that is, if you're born in the United States, even to parents who are here illegally, you should. I mean, the Constitution, the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, Article 1, it says if you're born in the United States, you are a citizen of the United States. And that's why I was impressed, and I got a little bit of solace from the fact that this executive order already went to a federal court, and the federal judge said, no, this is a Reagan appointee federal judge who said, absolutely, no, this is unconstitutional. And it's going to go up to the Supreme Court. But honestly, Heather, I don't see how it survives. The Constitution is very, very explicit about this.
That's it. So there are a number of executive orders that are terrifying. And then he's freezing funding to quintessentially important institutions like the NIH and pulling America from the WHO. But it's not unheard of, right, for presidents to freeze funding. But what's the difference here?
Well, there's not that much. Well, the difference, of course, is the fear is that it's a permanent freeze. But what administrations generally do, and I've been associated with several administrations who have done it, is you freeze funding really initially so that you have an opportunity, your people have an opportunity to go over what's been funded and make maybe slightly changes in priorities, assuming that it's legal to do that. But the fear here, obviously, is that Trump and Trump's people are going to keep the freeze on the National Institute of Health and the CDC and whatever else he's trying to freeze funding.
Remember when Trump got COVID? That was terrible. And he had to go to the hospital. I mean, thank God for science. We don't even talk about that anymore.
He hasn't come out as explicitly against science yet. I mean, it's only his first week.
He's only got RFK Jr. next to him.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's going to have, his hearing next week. So we'll see.
Okay, so then what's happening at the border? New troops going down there. There were already some troops down there.
That's right. The people who were down there already as troops were National Guard, and they were federal technically. But we're talking now about active duty troops. This is a very rare circumstance where active duty military are actually pulled into border control. And Trump is talking about not just 1,500, but 10,000 going down there. And a lot of that is going to be under control of if Pete Hegseth, I expect we're going to talk about him, assuming that he is as bad as everybody says he is. He's going to go right along with whatever Trump wants, obviously.
But this is the fixation on immigration that we've seen, and the lies about it, and the hyping up of the other, right? We've talked about that. No,
I was just going to say, in all of the coverage of all of this, there doesn't seem to be any realization that there has been a huge drop in illegal immigration, according to officials at the border. I mean, it's an 80% drop from last year. And the drop started not just this week or last week. It actually started in November. So it started even before the election. So I think that this whole immigration craziness, in fact, the assumption that Trump started in 2016, that immigrants were villains and thieves, and they were going to rape Americans. I mean, that is just horrendous. And he just keeps going. This is what we've heard over and over. The big lie. If you can tell a big lie is one of his big lies. He does over and over again. And the immigration lie has now taken root, even in the Democratic Party. A lot of Democrats are afraid to say no.
Well, that's it. I think you're referencing the Lake and Riley Act, which we had many, I think it was 46 Democrats in the House and then 12 in the Senate have voted in favor of this. I mean, what happens?
Let's. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let's just pause for a second. The Lake and Riley Act does authorize the federal government and the agents of the federal government, the immigration agents of the federal government, to basically detain anybody who has been accused, not found guilty, but accused of a crime, even shoplifting. Let's say, Heather Lofthouse, you are coming out of a Walmart, and a police officer comes up to you and said, Heather, I accuse you of shoplifting from that Walmart. You say, no, I didn't do that. Well, according to the Lake and Riley Act, you could be, if the officer believes you are an undocumented immigrant, you could be detained. You could be put in prison. I mean, think about this for a second. That police officer or that agent of the federal government, and it could be, and there are going to be agents all over in every city, could be sending people to jail on absolutely little or no evidence. I mean, you don't have any due process rights.
That's it. And so I think the goal is obviously to be horrific legally, but also I think it's really to scare people. I mean, this is one of his key tactics.
It's all about intimidation. I mean, already right now, you've got communities of people all over the United States, whether they are undocumented or not undocumented. They're immigrants. They are very fearful because there are so many laws that are being altered or changed or in the process of being changed. So much enforcement activity is being directed at these immigrant communities. There is a danger. Many of them feel that they will be prosecuted, even if they're here legally. I mean, remember, like the Lake and we were just talking about this act that could put them into prison, even if they're here legally. A lot of children are worried that their parents may be deported, and leaving what happens to the kids then. I mean, this is cruel stuff, Heather.
But let's be clear too, who else benefits from this? Because this is a trend. We have the prison industrial complex. Set to make more money.
The prison corporations, these are private profit-making corporations like Geo. They are in Fat City. They are, their stock prices have gone up. They are, who was one of their major lobbyists? Seems to me it was Pam Bondi, right?
Yep. She was. She is now on about to be the attorney general. So, and one person who's really calling them out is AOC. She has said this is corruption. She has also did not attend the inauguration, saying, why would I attend the inauguration of someone who's a rapist? But where is the rest of the outrage? I mean, you see people, the news is reacting in curious ways and people are kind of overwhelmed, but there is not enough outrage as I see it.
Well, there's not very much outrage. I mean, the Democrats, too many Democrats, in my humble opinion, are basically cooperating, are playing along. The Lake and Riley Act we just talked about. You have 45 House Democrats and something in the order of 12 Senate Democrats have gone along with this act. I mean, where is the resistance? This itself is an outrage. And there's a kind of appeasement or obedience in advance that we're seeing. I mean, the business community is completely way over there. I mean, it is totally intimidated by Trump. But you have too many politicians, too many media outlets are intimidated. This is a time when Americans really, and leadership in America, has to stand up to this neo-fascism, and we're not seeing it. We're just not seeing it this week. We're not seeing it.
And normalizing, I feel like, is an understatement at this point. I mean, it's just green lighting it left and right. And then we have these horrific things happening as it relates to immigrants, pushing for them to be legal, right? And then you have, on the opposite side, January 6th rioters, full pardons and commutations.
Well, the connection here is that is fear. I mean, what Trump is doing by letting these 1,500 rioters, I mean, these are all men. He's saying that they didn't have weapons. They were completely innocent. They did have weapons. We all saw the weapons. People died. And yet these people are now free. They're on the street. There are, the judges who convicted several of these people said, you should not be on the street. You are dangerous. You are dangerous to American society. Well, they're out there. I think the reason I think this is part of Trump's retribution plan, Heather, is not only is he kind of forgiving people who did horrible things in his name or for his candidacy, for his presidency, for his big lie that the 2020 election was stolen from him. But also he is setting the table for intimidation of a lot of other people who say to themselves, if you were Paul Pelosi, for example, you know that all you need is one nutcase out there and your life may be in danger.
Right.
And this is where all of connect the dots, because you've got this Kash Patel, who's been nominated by Trump to be FBI director. Kash Patel has put out a list of enemies, deep state enemies. And on the list of this deep state enemies are people like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo. Well, what did Trump do this week with regard to John Bolton and Mike Pompeo? Two people, incidentally.
He removed their security detail. He removed their clearance.
Now, they had a security detail. Let's be clear. During the Biden administration, these were Trump officials from the first Trump administration. They had security during the Biden administration because Biden had credible intelligence that these people, Bolton and Pompeo and one of Pompeo's assistants, were targeted by Iran and by Iranian agents for retribution with regard to the killing of a major Iranian leader by a drone attack during the first Trump administration. These are people who were carrying out the Trump administration policy. Iran has threatened them. The Biden administration gave them special protection. And now Trump, because he doesn't like Pompeo, because Pompeo in 2023 went in front of the CPAC and said, we don't need somebody like Trump. And John Bolton has been a Trump critic ever since Bolton left the administration, the Trump administration. And so this is retribution. What Trump does is like it's like a mob boss, keeps his fingers off of these things. No, I'm not doing anything. But what is he doing? He's saying to people out there, you be careful, because I've got a lot of ways of making your life.
This is a vengeance victory lap. That is what it is. And he is getting his message out. He is very good at it. And he does it. I mean, we're all saying, is he more fascist than we thought he would be fascist? I mean, on the one hand, yes. On the other hand, how is any of this surprising? And the one thing from the week that I felt positive about was Archbishop Buddy. So in the midst of all these people not speaking up, and the people who did speak up being penalized in tons of different ways that are terrifying, the few people are coming up. A few people are expressing outrage and saying,
she was courageous. In the midst of all of this, she looked into his eye. He looked at her. Wasn't it amazing? I mean, it was a moment of extraordinary, almost, I hate to use the word accountability, but it was almost as if Trump was being held accountable.
But it was strength and it was grace. I mean, I just found it so powerful because it was just an imploring in a human way.
Yeah.
It was,
have mercy. And of course, he was furious. I mean, afterwards he says, "This is a terrible," and you can imagine his tweets and his posts on Trump's social. She's awful, and she's.
I know.
But see, this is another part of the intimidation strategy, his vengeance strategy. He keeps his hands clean, but when he goes after somebody, and this is true of his first administration as well, when he goes after somebody, he knows that there will be death threats against them. When he went against the judges and the prosecutors who tried to hold him accountable during the Biden administration, he says things about them, and then the death threats start. This is a whole system, Heather, of retribution and intimidation, and courageous people are standing up to this, like the woman who did, the Episcopalian priest, bishop.
Archbishop Buddy.
But they're not enough of them.
There's
not enough of them.
And then the other part of this, and we know this, and I love that you and I are preaching to ourselves about this and everyone else, but let's continue. We have Pete Hegseth, right, who is inept and corrupt and terrible. And so Trump is putting in all of these people that he could control.
Horrible. But Hegseth, really, I mean, talk about unqualified, talk about dangerous, talk about somebody who is a misogynist and who has a record of abuse toward women, and a record of frittering away funds for these veterans groups that he was.
He couldn't get a job managing a Starbucks. He couldn't get a job. He wouldn't get the job, but now he's going to be in charge in one of the largest institutions we have, the biggest employers.
Not just the biggest employer of the United States, but the embodiment of the power of America, the United States military. I mean, people say to me sometimes, they say, well, there's not much difference between Trump 2 and Trump 1. It's the same Trump. No, there's a huge difference, because in Trump 1, he didn't put these kinds of people in positions of power. He put people who had at least a patina of responsibility. But these people, the only thing they have, Heather, is that they are Trump loyalists, totally Trump loyalists. Hegseth should never be confirmed.
I know. And a good example is Mike Pence, right? Versus JD Vance. I mean, there is a different HR underway right now. And it's very scary.
And everybody knows in the Trump, this inchoate Trump administration, they know if they don't toe the line, if they don't do exactly what he wants, if they don't say publicly exactly what he wants to hear, they could end up like who? Like Mike Pompeo and John Bolton, and be exposed to danger.
Right. Mehdi Hassan did a great tweet this week about a new word that I hadn't heard, which is a kakistocracy.
Wait a minute.
And
wait a minute. Kakistocracy?
Yeah.
Kakistocracy?
It is rule by the worst people, the least able to rule. I mean, we have a lot of Greek words for what's going on, but I like that one.
Trump has created a kakistocracy.
Hmm. Among other ocracies.
There's not, besides the Greek root of that, there's also the more common use of a word kaka, meaning,
Yes. Meaning
so the, and
dirty
so
and
dirty,
basic.
yes.
Yeah.
And that's right. I mean, a kakistok, I like that.
Yeah, it's helpful to think about all the ways to describe what's happening. So we can, I think, reminding yourself what's happening is one of the ways we survive. And then we haven't even talked about Elon Musk. But I want to flag, you've written about this, and then we've done some videos on it, but you have this notion that there are 4 American stories that we often tell, right? And these are themes that go across epics and myths and reality, and one of them is the rise of the triumphant individual. And you have 4 of these, right? And then the other one is
the benevolent community. So
the benevolent community.
That's right.
But the individual.
You've got the triumphant individual. These are basically these are traditional American stories, and my point is that we hear them over and over. And anybody who wants to talk about America is going to inevitably talk about these 4 stories. The triumphant individual, rags to riches, anybody can make it. The benevolent community that supports, we join together. And then there are 2 negative stories. One story is of the rot at the top, we look upward sometimes, not as much as we should, and we see rot. And the other is the mob at the gates. We are prone to be fearful of people who are outside the United States. So these 4 stories are old. They start really before America starts. And,
but what's happening that I'm seeing is the mix of the triumphant individual and the rot at the top. I cannot believe all of these. I mean, we're just so focused on these. They're men, these individuals who are larger than life, and they're climbing and they're going higher and they're getting more powerful and richer. And it's wild to watch those 2 dovetail.
Well, they dovetail in a very peculiar way, because Elon Musk, to take example, number one, or Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, these people are both idolized by a certain part of the American public. They are superheroes, but at the same time, they are rot at the top. They have taken their wealth, and this is true, particularly true of Elon Musk, taken their wealth and put it into politics in a way that undermines and corrupts the entire system. So to me, they are more rot at the top than they are triumphant individuals. And Heather, by the way, you could see this at the inauguration when Trump is there. I mean, giving his inaugural speech, who are the most prominent people there, standing even in front of Republican members of Congress, standing even in front of Trump's nominees to run his government, are Elon Musk and Bezos and Zuckerberg, and also Google's CEO. I mean, it's extraordinary. This is the robber barons of the 19th century. This is the second Gilded Age, and Trump has the audacity to pretend that he is the tribune of the people, of the average working people. Well, this is everything is now exposed. I'm sorry. Everything is exposed. This is the oligarchy on parade.
$1 trillion, 4 people, 4 or 5 people in that first row represented.
Well,
$1 trillion.
And since the election, Elon Musk himself has become at least $70 billion richer. 70 billion. I'm not saying million. $70 billion richer since the election, because
the amount of stuff that has happened since we last had coffee. I mean, remember, TikTok was banned, then it came back.
TikTok is a good example of this rot. I mean, in the sense that Trump has there was a law against TikTok. Now, we can debate whether it was a good law or bad law, but TikTok was supposed to be ended. And then Trump, without any particular authority, I mean, yes, he's president, but a president can't simply reject a law of the land. I mean, the law was TikTok had to stop. And Trump says, no, we're going to go on. Why? Because Trump, for some probable reason, has some transaction with TikTok, and you can bet, follow the money. I mean, Trump is probably going to make a lot of money off of TikTok, as he does all kinds of other things. I mean, Heather, what else did he do this week? I mean, or no, it was before he took over officially in office. The
Last
Trump
weekend.
coin, the Trump coin. I mean, the audacity. I mean, he comes up with his own Bitcoin, his own particular bit of crypto. And of course, it soared in value since he was sworn in. He swears himself in, and then he can make as much money off of his office.
What was the story
possible?
you had? What was the story you had? I forget what it was. Was it Bill Gates? Someone took you out to lunch and you had to reimburse for the amount because that's what federal employees do.
When I was Secretary of Labor, I mean, Bill Gates did take me out to lunch, and the bill was $200. He wanted to go to a very upscale restaurant, and the bill was about $250. And the solicitor in the Labor Department rightfully said to me, I had to make a check out to Bill Gates for the cost of the lunch, $125. And I wrote it out to Bill Gates. I thought, I'm writing a check to Bill Gates, and I'm sure he cashed it. I don't even know. But there were. The point is that there were regulations about money in government, money influencing government employees, government officials. You had to be careful. I mean, how can Trump do what he's doing?
I know. And there was a sense of morality, right? You wanted to follow those laws.
That's right.
You took it seriously that people had entrusted in you a federal position to help run the United States in a certain way. And so you wanted to follow them.
Absolutely. This is more rot at the top. I mean, this is how the system rots, like a fish from the head down. And Trump is leading the rot again. Now, there was rot in the first term, of course, but this is why the second term is showing itself to be so different, because the rot is bigger. The fascism, the neo-fascism, is more out in the open. The oligarchy is more revealed than it was the first time around. The cruelty is more immediate than it was the first time around. This is not like the first time. This is, and also the horrible people that he's putting, the bottom feeders that he's putting in charge of the government, much worse than the first time around.
What about Trump's emphatic salute this past week?
You mean Musk? Musk.
Sorry. What about Musk?
Listen, you are
I know.
Forgiven.
I'm conflating the two.
Conflating. I mean, is it Musk or is it Trump or is it Trust or is it Mump or is it?
Yeah.
I mean, they are conflated. And I thought that Nazi salute that Musk gave was very much along the same lines as Trump saying, "Stand back and stand by." I mean, and then, of course, months later, he issues his post. Come to January 6th, Washington. It'll be wild. These are all nods and winks. And this is exactly what Musk was doing with the salute. You deny it. You say, oh, no, I wasn't doing anything else like that. But the neo-Nazis, they know what you're doing. Even if you didn't intend to do it or consciously intend to do it, it doesn't matter. It's
and you
signal.
You have a law degree and I don't, but there is a pattern that we can look at, right? It would be one thing if it happened randomly, but I mean, look at the font he chose for the MAGA hat was reminiscent of the Nazi party. We have, the puns he was doing this week.
Well, that's
around
right.
With Nazisms.
The puns, he thinks it's funny. What does he have no historic sense? Does Musk not remember the Holocaust? Does he care about the Holocaust?
Of course he remembers, because he went on an apology tour and he went to Auschwitz last year.
Well, he obviously has put it out of his mind.
Yeah.
It's now a joke. I mean, this, and he is somebody who is really joined at the hip to Donald Trump, at least in the first week of the Trump administration. It's Musk and Trump, Trump and Musk. And Musk is getting his Doge organized. Musk pushes out Ramaswamy, so it's totally going to be the Musk show. And Musk can even survive. He says that one of the major initiatives that Trump announced this week, the AI, artificial intelligence initiative, this big consortium. What does he say? Musk says, well, they can't possibly get enough money together.
Yep, I know. So interesting. But so here's the thing, and I don't mean to be flippant, but really and truly, what is the positive? I mean, the positive is it is so unbelievably broken and it is so blatant. And here it is. We are staring at this oligarchy. There have to be leaders that are starting to come up, right? And who are going to take the reins against this.
Well, I would hope so, Heather. That's what I tell myself in my darkest moments. I say things are out in the open now in ways that they were never out in the open before. The neo-fascism, the neo-Nazism, the oligarchy,
the misogyny,
the misogyny, the kakistocracy. I mean, it's all there. Everybody can see it. Nothing is being disguised now. And maybe now this is laying a foundation for 2026, for 2028. Not only a political foundation for people who care about the country to take the country back, but also for the fundamental what's called the vibe to swing back. So we don't idolize these robber barons and the people who are destroying the institutions of the United States, institutions that my parents' generation, my father, and I suspect, Trump's father and Bill Clinton's father and George W. Bush's father, they were all in the Second World War. Our mothers worked in, my mother was working in a factory making gas masks. I mean, these people, this generation, our parents worked to preserve this country, to preserve these institutions, to preserve democracy. And what do we have now? We have somebody who is of my generation, like Donald Trump, who's now getting rid of these institutions, who actually couldn't care less, has total contempt for democracy. That's what we're dealing with.
I know. And I do feel that I am looking for things that make me feel slightly less full of despair. One of them is Vishal on our team, who has come on the Coffee Klatch before, so people know him, found this really interesting speech of yours, which I love torturing you with blasts from the past.
Oh, no, no.
Here we go. So it was from your gubernatorial race running Massachusetts in 2002, and you were talking about Robert F. Kennedy Sr. and something that he said in the 60s.
As you saw a few minutes ago, my first job in politics was in 1967. 35 years ago this summer, when I was a college student working for Robert Kennedy. Well, working for exaggerates a bit. I was an intern in his Senate office running his auto pen signature machine. But I will never forget something he once said that now speaks to us across the years. He said, "The future does not belong to those who are content with today. Rather, it will belong to those who can blend passion, reason, and courage in a commitment to the ideals and enterprises of American society." I am no longer the young man I was when he first said those words, but they are as fresh and powerful to me now as they were more than 35 years ago.
There it was. That gives me some hope to think in those terms.
Well, I did not win that election, by the way.
Well, let's not talk about that, Bob.
Okay, we're trying to be uplifting.
Back to the quote.
Thank you. I mean, there is always room for hope. And when I worked for Robert F. Kennedy, 59 years, it's now 59 years ago, Robert F. Kennedy Sr., there was, those were dark and difficult times. Not only had John F. Kennedy been assassinated, Martin Luther King the next year was assassinated. Robert F. Kennedy himself was assassinated in 1968. And I remember in 1968 thinking it could not get worse. America was burning down. The Vietnam War was heating up. Tens of thousands of young men were being shipped off to Vietnam. My classmates, hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese were being killed. And then what happens in politics? Richard Nixon wins the election in 1968. I mean, could you have a worse year? So one way I, Heather, kind of cheer myself up is I try to remember that we've been in very bad places before, and we are resilient. We are resilient people. We're a resilient society. Trump won by 1.5%, and that's with millions of people not voting who had voted for Joe Biden in 2020.
And that's after a lot of views on YouTube also. I mean, there were interesting reports out this week in Bloomberg and otherwise talking about how Trump got into the minds of so many young people and young males in particular.
Well, I want to end this on your positive note, the positive note that you really brought up, and just say, Heather, to you, I want to thank you again. Your energy, your enthusiasm, your zest just makes everything a little brighter. And to the rest of you, and to the rest of you, I just want to say, this is week one. It is as bad as many of you had feared. It's as bad as I had feared. And I don't blame you if you feel despondent and despairing and depressed and fearful. And many of you have reason to be fearful. But all I can say is we all, as members of this society and as members of the world, we have a responsibility to do what we can now to resist this neo-fascism. And there are many ways to resist. We'll talk about this next Saturday. In the meantime, I hope next week is better for you and for America and for the world than this week has been. And Heather and I join you in wishing you the very best.
And thank you, Bob, on behalf of all of us.
Thanks, Heather.